Canto 17. Summary. Dante and Virgil come to the edge of the seventh circle, and, as hinted at the end of the previous canto, a gigantic monster rises up from the abyss to meet them at the top of the cliff. This is Geryon, a flying serpent with a human head and a face with the appearance of justice and kindness. This monster is the perfect image of fraud, which characterizes the sins being punished below. He lands, and Virgil approaches him to compel him to take them down to those lower circles of hell. Meanwhile, Dante is free to briefly engage with a group of sinners he sees nearby, huddled next to the edge of the cliff. They are sitting down, though they are uncomfortable due to the heat above and the heat below. They each have an empty coin purse hanging around their necks, which they are compelled to look at for eternity. These are the usurers, those who acted violently against God by abusing God's property through financial means. He speaks with a Paduan, disdainfully stuck with a group of Florentines. After this brief interaction, he returns to Virgil, who has already mounted Geryon. Despite great fear and trepidation, Dante climbs up, and they begin their descent down to the eighth circle. Canto 17. Blasphemers, Sodomites, and Usurers. Behold there the beast with the spear-like tail, flying over mountains, breaking walls and arms. Behold that which makes all the world to reek. So began my leader to speak to me. He gestured to the beast to come ashore close to the end of the marble pathway. And that filthy image of fraud came on, beaching his head and chest on the cliff top, though he did not put his tail in the stream. His face bore the semblance of a just man, and his outward appearance such kindness, while the rest of his trunk was serpentine. He had 2 clawed feet, hair to the armpits, and a back, a breast, and both sides painted with designs of knots and of small bucklers. Neither Tartars nor Turks ever made cloth, groundwork, or embroidery with more hues, nor with such webs woven by Arachne. As punts are sometimes moored on the river, partly in the water, partly on land, and just as between the piggish Germans the beaver readies itself for its war, so the awful beast was setting himself on the rim of rock that blocks the hot sand. All of his tail was darting in the void, twisting upwards the forked, venomous tip, just like the scorpion that arms its tail. My leader said, "Now our pathway must bend itself a little upwards toward that beast, which, malevolent, is lying over there." Therefore we descended on the right side, and took 10 steps along the furthest edge, making sure to avoid the sand and flame. And after we had come to him, I saw people on the sand a little beyond, sitting close to the place that falls away. There my master said, "So that you may take the fullest experience from this wheel, go to them, consider their condition. Let your conversations with them be brief. I will speak with this beast till you return, so that he may lend us his strong shoulders." Thus I went on to the outermost edge of that 7th circle, all on my own, and walked where those unhappy people sat. Despondency burst outward through their eyes. With their hands they tried to protect themselves here, there, from the fire wind, from the hot sand. Not unlike a pack of dogs in summer, first with snout, then with foot, trying to ward off the biting of fleas, of flies, or horseflies. Then I looked into the faces of some on whom the painful fire was descending. Not one of them I knew, but I noticed that from each neck hung a purse, each bearing a certain color and a certain sign, and it seemed that their eyes feasted on these. As I come among them, looking closely, I saw on a yellow purse a bright blue that bore the face and frame of a lion. Then, my gaze proceeding along its course, I saw another one, as red as blood, featuring a goose whiter than butter, and one whose little white sack was marked by a bright blue pregnant sow, then said to me, "What are you doing down here in this ditch? Now leave. But since you are also alive, know that Vitaliano, my fellow townsman, will join me here at my left hip. I am a Paduan midst Florentines. Often they speak, deafening to my ears, crying out, 'Let come the sovereign cavalier!' Who will bring the coin purse with the 3 goats? Here, twisting his mouth, he stuck out his tongue, just like an ox licking his own nostrils. Fearing a longer stay might cause more pain to him who had cautioned me to be brief, I left behind those miserable souls. I found my leader had already climbed onto the back of the fierce animal. Then he said, "Now be strong and courageous. From here we descend by this kind of stair. Mount up in front, I wish to be between, so that his tail can do you no evil." Like one with a quartan fever shivers, with nails already pale, trembling with cold at the slightest apprehension of shade, so I became as these words were given. But shame made its threats to me, which always strengthens the servant before a good lord. I settled myself on those huge shoulders. I wanted to say, "Yes," but no voice came like I thought it would. "Make sure you hold me." But he, who had saved me at other times from other perils, bound me in his arms and held me up as soon as I mounted. He said, "Geryon, now move. Let your turns be broad, and let your descending be slow. Consider the strange burden you carry." As the little boat puts out from its berth, backwards, in such a way he left, after he felt itself free of the edge. He turned his tail to where his chest had been, fully stretched it out, moving like an eel, and with his clawed feet gathered up the air. I believe no greater fear was felt when Phaethon let go of the reins and the sky above was blackened as it still appears. Nor when the miserable Icarus felt his lower back fleeced by the warmed wax, and his father crying to him, "Don't go that way!" Then was mine, when I saw myself airborne on every side, every sight extinguished from my vision, save the sight of that beast. He slides downward, swimming slowly. Slowly it turns, descends. I would have known nothing but for the wind from below on my face. I was already hearing the whirlpool on my right, horribly booming below, for which I stuck out my head, looking down. Then I became more afraid of our fall, for I saw fires and heard weeping, whence I, trembling with fear, gripped harder with my thighs. Then I saw what I did not see before, the turning and descent through great evils that were crowding in from different corners. As the falcon that has long been in flight without noticing either lure or bird makes the falconer say, "Oh, you come down," falls exhausted, wherefore it moves swiftly through 100 turnings and alights far from its master, full of disdain and spite. So Geryon set us down on the floor, at the very foot of the sheer-cut cliff, and, unburdening our persons, vanished, as the arrow from the string disappears.